While you okay. All right. So the topic I have for today actually, I wanted to talk about how to avoid hosting burnout. And I thought that this would be a good week to talk about that because actually a lot of us, except David, you're probably going to be entering into your busy season, but like Lisa, we're entering in our slower season. So I wanted to kind of speak to all hosts, but really a lot of the nation in general is moving into slower season. And now is the time to be thinking about how to do busy season better. So, because it is slower, things slow down a little bit. And so instead of, yes, it's okay to like take a break, regroup, look at your strategy, make some updates to your property. But now's the time really to be thinking about creating your standard operating procedures or going back and doing the things that you understand now better so that when busy season rolls around the second time, you are more prepared. So that was my logic with doing this call this week. I'll share my screen. I'll kind of like go back and forth between um, my personal notes and then hospitable and price labs and all the things so we can have some visuals along with the topic. Okay, so the first thing that I also want to touch on is a lot of what we do with Airbnb and short-term rentals in general is passive in its own way, but it's not 100% passive. It is not just putting money into the stock market and never checking your stocks for a year and just being surprised at it going up and down. There is back end work involved in running an operation because at the end of the day, we all have our mini little business that can grow if we want it to grow. So although things can be automated, it is not 100% passive. So I think we all understand that at this point. Welcome, Dana. Thanks for being here. We're just talking about how to avoid burnout. So we're going to go over all of that. And then, Dana, just since you're joining us now, um, since it's a smaller call, feel free to drop questions in the chat or unmute. We can always review anything. So yeah, essentially it's really about I want you guys to be thinking about building a system that's going to work for you even when you're tired or burned out or exhausted. Make as many automations as you can without having the idea that it's completely passive and you never have to touch your business or be involved. I don't think that there is such thing as a business that is 100% passive. Um, Even if you hire out property management, there is a level of you still needing to be involved in that because we are working with assets and physical spaces, not just the stock market, which really at the end of the day is passive. If you're earning dividends, that's passive income, where this is different. So, if you guys feel like it, you can drop in the chat any times where you felt like you as a host were kind of being more reactive versus feeling like you were in control. Because when we don't have our system set up, sometimes that's what ends up happening is reactivity versus proactivity. And it's ideal to be reactive or proactive, but we've all had moments of being reactive. So feel free to drop in the chat if you have anything or stories that you want to share or do the hand raise emoji on the screen and I'll stop. Okay. So when I say burnout, I say this very lightly, especially as someone with a background in working in healthcare, where I mean, like working really long shifts or working, one-on-one with patients and things like that. That's a different kind of burnout. I feel like in hosting, sometimes even little tasks that are really easy and almost mindless, but when you do them so often and almost like out of nowhere, you don't know when you're going to be responding to a guest or dealing with a leaky pipe, that can form its own form of burnout. So that's what I'm trying to get at here. It's not like the burnout where you're constantly working or overworked hours wise. uh, it's more like all the little things that can take a toll on you because they add up over time, and it's more unpredictable. Like when we go to a regular 9 to 5 job, you have your predictable hours. Maybe you don't have to respond to any emails after 5 p.m. Where in this business, we have the flexibility really to, manage these properties from anywhere. You just don't always know what time you're going to be getting reached out to. So, um, it's again about having systems and processes that make it as automated as it possibly can be to save your energy, to help you stay excited about what you're doing, because Airbnb really is an exciting, fun business to be in. Not passive though. Um, so first things first, automate what repeats. So some examples of this, you guys know we go over this really. Sometimes you're probably like, man, Emily says the same things over and over. Well, I do for a reason, and that's usually because it's important. And I think there's a stat that's like sometimes it takes up to 30 times of hearing something before it will actually stick and process in your brain. So, um, having your automated messages and hospitable, ready to go and feeling really good, and adjusting those with over time as you start to understand your property more, as you start to understand what kind of questions you're getting or what information guests still feel like they're not understanding. So all of your guest messaging, for the most part, is automatable. And for everything that's not, you can have a system for how you're going to respond to that. You will get thrown curveballs every now and then where you get a question from a guest and you're like, man, I've never thought of that. How, what kind of question is this? You'll get those curveballs every now and then. And so expect that. We can't prepare for 100% of the questions that will come in, but what we can prepare for, we need to. So just touching on that is your check-in message, your check-out message. Those can go in. We did a whole call once on the different triggers that Hospitable has, but there are triggers for before the booking. So you can have automated messages for before a booking is even made. You have automated messages for when the booking is made, during the stay, and after the stay. So I think those are the four different triggers or time frames that you can automate the messages. So utilize that. And response times. We've talked about this on a call. I think I spent a whole call talking about response times. Airbnb is tracking how quickly you respond to things. If you're leaving messages on read or on not responded to for hours on end, or you're not responding to inquiries or really any message at all, that is noted and tracked and used almost against you. So with that automation, that counts as a response. It counts as an acknowledgement. So make sure you're setting those up. It's nice to have kind of that mid-stay message, or, even if you want to program your message to make sure that the guest got in okay that same evening. You don't have to do it mid-stay, whatever you prefer for the way you like to operate. Just know anytime you send an automated message, that's typically when you can expect for messages to be coming back at you. So if you have an automated message that goes out a day before check-in, you kind of have to know, okay, typically 24 hours before my guests check in, that's when I start, having to be involved back on my phone because they ask questions. And same with if you have a message that's like, hey, how are things going? Did you guys get in okay? Let me know if you need anything. Guests typically will respond to that. And then if they don't follow their lead and you don't need to check in again and say hello, always read between the lines and follow a guest lead with how responsive they are. You can automate, Hospitable is so cool. You can automate trash day messages. Let's say, you've got Can Monkey that comes and rolls the bins back and forth to the curb. Give your guests a heads up about that, because, depending on where your bins are, maybe they're tucked away in the garage and the Can Monkey person has to go into the garage to pull the bins out. You don't want ever to have somebody on the property that guests are not made aware of. You can automate. Let's say you have lawn service every Wednesday. You can automate a message that goes out to the guests on Tuesdays that says, hey, just a reminder, lawn service will be there on Wednesdays. Make sure your vehicles are moved or whatever you need to share in that message. And then, other ideas, pool service, hot tub service, any regular recurring service that can be automated so that when I didn't have this automated, um, it's just one more tab open in your brain. So what you'll start finding yourself doing is being like, oh crap, I totally forgot. The lawn service is going to be there 8 a.m. tomorrow. And then you find yourself kind of frantically sending a message or after the fact reaching out to the guests being like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to tell you lawn service was coming today. Or you're responding to a message of a guest saying, hey, we were woken up by the lawn guy ringing the doorbell because we didn't know we need to move our cars. So just automate it and then know it's covered and you don't have to have that in your brain. And the more we are just holding in our brain, the harder it is to be successful. You can automate reviews. Obviously, we know this, hopefully. I've had some people ask me things like, well, why, aren't you being annoying by asking guests for reviews? The proof is in the pudding. It works. If you want to be successful, you have to get reviews. Every business asks for reviews. Every single business. We have pest control. Pest control asks us to rate the service for the day. I get a text right after the service. I click two buttons, rate the service. It is not annoying. It might feel annoying if your messaging is annoying, if you're like begging for a positive review or you sound a certain way, or if you're sending too many messages. But no, it's okay to ask for reviews. Um, in those, also just this morning, I had two review reminder messages go out to two separate guests, and within, not even kidding you, within like 5 seconds of that message going out, both reviews were posted, ready to go, done. I got the review. They are done with their trip. They would like to stop getting the messages too, I'm sure, so they just do it. So as for reviews, those can be automated. Um, you could do it manually if you want, if you remember and you want to do it that way. Also review replies. So if you'd like to publicly respond to reviews that guests are leaving you, that is automated. It is AI will rate a response. Definitely review the automation and make sure it still sounds like it's in your voice and your tone and your company brand or whatever. But man, what a time saver to not have to manually do that. You can automate messages to cleaners. So with my cleaner, every time we get a new booking, Hospitable will push out a message to my cleaner with the date, the location, since she cleans multiple properties, the amount of pets, if there's infants. So you use the short codes in Hospitable to just give all that information to your cleaner. That includes, you have to do this, you guys, because human error, you just don't want to leave room for error because we're human. So, um, the reminder to your cleaner, if you use the short codes, oh, if a guest alters a stay, let's say they shorten their stay by a day, then the text will get pushed back out to the cleaner to let them know that the stay was reduced by a day or extended by a day. It will also send a message to the cleaner if the stay was canceled. I cannot, even with one property, I cannot imagine doing that manually. I can't fathom the idea of it playing this middleman constantly. So once you start, especially in busy seasons, we're talking about not being burned out. If you have, you're still working your W-2 or your other business, or you want to be retired or whatever you're doing, whatever your reason is for doing Airbnb, even if you're doing nothing else other than hosting, to have to remember all of those moving pieces, you're gonna mess up. Just even if you're a perfect person, you're gonna mess up and you're gonna have a cleaner show up to a property that doesn't need to be cleaned yet. That's gonna cause issues with you and your cleaner or your guests. Just automate it. Take the 10 minutes to learn how to automate it on Hospitable. Save yourself the 10 minutes upfront versus the problems down the road. I was talking actually to someone recently who was doing all of that manually, and she actually had Hospitable, and I'm like, man, it just takes watching a little video. and your life will change. And I helped her set it up um, in a consultation, and she said it just changed everything for her. So it takes the pressure off. And you're paying for that. You're paying for that by using Hospitable. So let's see. Oh, door code creation. I've heard of hosts doing this manually. Oh my gosh. Hospitable will do this for you. They will create a code, a unique code for that guest. Never, ever, ever just use the same door code. Unless you are in the middle of nowhere where there's no chance that another guest could get back into your property. I have a code for owners of properties. I have my own code for myself. I have a code that anytime we have a maintenance servicer is only active for that specific day, even to the hour. So they can't come back into the property. That's a safety concern. Like cleaners get a separate code. If you ever fire or let go of a cleaner, delete their code. Do not leave them free entry into your house. Same with lock boxes. You've got to change lock boxes. Really, I think for ultimate safety, you should be changing lock boxes if anyone has used it, or at least on a yearly basis or whatever. Um, yeah, again, it boggles my mind. I can't imagine having to, every time I got a booking, let the guest know what their code is without using any automations. So just do it up front, especially those like David, I know you're just launching, or you're going to be launching. Make it a priority to understand how to make sure your device is linked to Hospitable if you plan to use Hospitable.
I
So,
I
mhm.
do actually that brings up a question. So our landlord owns the electronic lock. It's his account. It's his. So I did speak to him about giving access to Hospitable, and he seems fine with that. He would have to he would have to do it. So maybe
I'll pause you there. I'll pause you there. What kind of lock is it? Is it a Schlag?
yeah.
Okay, so never ever leave door code creations or anything in the hands of your landlord. You will be in a bad situation at some point, like a guest getting locked out and you having no way to get that guest locked.
No, sorry, that's not what I meant.
Okay.
We would use Hospitable, but he would have to set it up with them. He would have to provide them with his overall
Nope.
password.
Nope. So on Schlag, the app itself, the owner of the account can share virtual keys with whoever's going to be living on the property or renting the property. So all he has to do, and I would Google this or whatever, uh, so have him go into the Schlag app, share the virtual key with you, and then you essentially have the keys to the app. So then you have full control of the door lock
But then I have his access basically
to his houses.
to his house. I think I get the feeling that he wants to keep his access separate. He doesn't want to provide
Mm.
me with his access.
You
But
might be, are you thinking of ring? So when you share a virtual key, you can do it per property. So the locks that are on your arbitrage unit, the house that you're renting, are separate from the locks that he has
no,
on his
no, no,
personal.
I understand that, but what I, but he owns the account, and I don't think he wants to give me the full access to it.
That
But
would be like a landlord not giving you keys to a house.
well, no, we have our own code, but it's a code that he provided us. Um,
That's a red flag
so
to me. That's a big red flag.
well, I think all it needs is for him to give Hospitable the access that they need. I mean, it doesn't matter who gives Hospitable the access. Doesn't have to be me.
I mean, so that gets really
Because
complicated.
basically he would be giving me the master key,
Mhm.
the master code. And I
Yeah, I just am not able to see a way that It doesn't make sense that way. It doesn't make sense for him to log into your hospitable to connect the app and then not give you access. That doesn't make any sense. So all what I would recommend, you don't have, you can take what I say with a grain of salt, but you should have access to the door lock if you're going to be using that door lock. And if he has control of it, then you don't have control of it. Even if he connects it to Hospitable, errors can happen. You have to be able to get into the app to recreate codes, to generate new codes, to resync things. And you don't want to create the situation where you're dependent on your landlord. It could be at midnight that you need to get into the app. So I still get into my Schlag app. Sometimes when I need to manually unlock a door, you cannot do that through Hospitable. You can't manually lock and unlock a door through Hospitable. If he has given you one code, what happens when that code, let's say for some reason there's a syncing error and that code doesn't work? So my suggestion would be to share the virtual keys. There really shouldn't be a landlord involved in your hospitable account, in my opinion. You want to keep rapport with your landlord and you want to have a good relationship, but you don't want the lines to cross of the landlord having essentially the control of your guests being able to get in and out or connecting to your hospitable account. There shouldn't be a need for that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
as a second layer of protection, I just chiming in another thing, I agree with what Emily's saying, but the other thing too you might want to consider, and we have it and we own our properties, is a second like backup lockbox, like old school with a hard copy of the key. In the event that for whatever reason the internet goes out, the battery dies, you have some alternative means for the guest to
Yeah.
access the property, because especially now, I think with VRBO, if your guest can't get into the property within like 30 minutes, I think there's something where they can, I don't know, something like they refund the whole entire booking or something. I don't know, but I would just look into,
We
you
do
know,
actually have a spare key in a lockbox. Yeah, we do have that backup.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just in case.
Yeah, everyone should have a spare key for sure. So that's always an option. But yeah, I would have them share their virtual keys and then there's no connection to the app. I've got virtual keys to multiple owners and I don't have any access to their personal homes or anything like that. It just allows me to be able to open doors, lock doors, create new codes, create codes for vendors, and that has nothing to do really. I mean, you could probably have them link up in hospital. I wouldn't want my landlord in my hospital or connected to it really in any way. I don't know. Maybe you'll find a way, David. Maybe you'll.
I I think you're right. I should, Google it. I did a little investigation into it, like through hospitable.
Mhm.
That basically that's what they say. That as long as somebody gives them access, it doesn't really matter who it is. But I agree. There's going to be if there's an issue, if we need to change a code in the middle of the night, and I don't have the access to do that, then yeah, I could
It
see that being a
could
problem.
pose an issue.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think I think once I explain that to him, I think he'll be okay with it. So.
yeah. I think another thing just on this topic too, if for anyone who has security cameras, which I do recommend, a lot of times maybe the owner or the landlord of the property is the owner of that account. Let's say the reason why I like Ring cameras specifically is because you can add a shared user without giving access to your own personal homes, just that specific property or that one specific camera.
Right, we were able to do that actually, yeah.
Yeah, so in that instance, it seems to me like he's open. Maybe he just needs to be it just the process of that needs to be explained so he's not unclear or feeling like it's invasive that you
Yeah.
have his keys. But it's super easy. It's super easy to share virtual keys. Um, and like with the virtual key, I don't think you have access to reprogram anything or delete anything, but so it should be. I would watch,
Okay.
yeah, I would do that.
Yeah.
And
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to take up so much time. I was just
that's a
curious.
That's a good topic. And that even brought us into the topic of having a backup key. So yes, you can connect your door lock to Hospitable, but you still want to be able to access that app just in case, because there can always be software syncing errors at any point in time. I'm really glad you asked that question. So, and then with that, eh, connecting the devices, once you have the virtual keys, connecting the Schlag lock to Hospitable, and then putting the short code. When I say short code, it's basically like Hospitable's form of coding. You literally put a percent sign and it will come up with a code to be able to automate your messages. Watch a YouTube video on Hospitable if you're not sure, or just play around in Hospitable. Uh, but with that, then it will generate the code automatically. So you don't have to be like, what should I get? What code should I give this guest? It'll just use the last four digits of their phone number, which then also knowing that every time the unique code is generated, is their last four digits of their phone number. That makes then, let's say there's a suspicious situation and you're not sure if the person who's trying to get into your house, I don't know, you always have the ability to then have them confirm the last four digits of their phone number to be able to get into your property if needed. So safety first, security first, never use the same door code repeatedly, or you just set yourself up to be in a liability situation that you don't want to be in. But yeah, report back, David. Let us know what your landlord says and
Mhm.
try to get control of that. I would highly recommend. Cool. Okay, so let's just still on the topic of Hospitable too, the canned messages. That's a really great feature. So if you've been asked a question, this is my rule of thumb. If you've been asked a question at least twice, create a canned message because most of the time for those kind of FAQs, you're going to respond the same way. The example I have is a question about how to use the AC thermostat. And instead of just every time having to step away from dinner or, whatever I'm doing and retype out the whole message, even though it's programmed in here and it doesn't take me long, it's still code switching. So now we can just put in the response that we've already written and just send it. And that way, it's not pulling me away from what I'm in the middle of doing. So definitely using canned messages and then the questions feature on Airbnb, or I'm sorry, on Hospitable that can automatically detect questions. Um, and then you may just preemptively think of how you would respond in an emergency situation. So I think of it like, um, I mean, we've all been in grade school or whatever when you're doing fire drills, or maybe you have fire drills in your adult life in other situations. But I used to work in a school and the kids knew exactly what to do. Anytime the fire alarms went off, they knew to get in line and then be quiet and walk out the door and where to go. So the only reason they knew what to do was because they had rehearsed it in advance. So the same thing with emergencies. Think about it. Like, what are some ideas you would have of what to say in various situations, and then draft those messages out and have a folder, however you want to organize yourself, that you can, or canned message pre-prepared. So, we just recently the other day had a guest with no hot water. And that was the first time in a few years of managing that that had ever happened to me. But I knew what to say and what to do because I've thought about it before. So, you start with troubleshooting, seeing if you need to send someone there. We actually ended up needing to replace a hot water heater. So understand, like, where is your hot water heater? Is it gas? Is it electric? Um, Understanding your internet. What's the internet company? Do you have your logins ready? What are the troubleshooting steps for the internet that you use? If there's a water leak, how could you respond? Do you know when to tell a guest to call 911? So, kind of think of some of those situations so that if and when they happen, you're not completely caught off guard. So that you practice the fire drill, I think is the best way to put it. You won't be able to come up with every situation or be 1000% prepared. You still may have moments as a newbie where you panic and you have to think it through or try to stay calm. Those things will happen, but the better prepared you are, the better you'll feel, the more confident you'll feel, the better the experience for the guest, so on and so forth. You guys get the point. Yeah, so something I always say, I just wrote it down. I'm like, if you've sent the same message more than twice, it's just a system waiting to be automated. So don't let it be a year go by where you haven't automated frequently asked questions. So that's with hospitable automations. Really good topics, really good questions. Kind of moving into another thing that I think most people in this group know, but I'll just repeat it, is pricing automation. And when I say pricing automation, I don't mean set and forget. I don't mean set up your price labs once and never look at it again. That's not the kind of automation I'm talking about. I'm talking about basically in price labs, you input the information that you want price labs to push out. So you're almost like creating the code and the price lab software is executing the code. You're behind it and then the software will push out what you tell it to do. So it's automated in that regard, but it's not automated in that your setup should never change, or your base price should never change, or your rules should never change, or your minimum night stays should never change, or your discounts should never change. Those um those things should change. So that's not automated. There isn't a way. I don't know of any pricing that really could just be like set up once and never touched again. I don't think that exists. If it does, someone share it with me. I spend a big bulk of the time on pricing in my business because that is the ultimate revenue driver is your pricing. So automate. Does someone have a question?
Yes, I do. Speaking of pricing, I'm going over pricing right now. If I set up a promo in Airbnb, will Price Labs override it when it updates daily?
It doesn't override a custom promotion. It will set your nightly rate still based on your rules, and then the custom promotion will apply after Price Labs rules.
All
Does
right,
that make
thank you.
sense? Yeah, I hope that makes sense. It's kind of hard to visualize and explain, but
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I mean, Lisa's working on her pricing, and that is definitely something, you guys, that you should pay attention to. And if you notice suddenly that bookings have gone silent, it's the number one lever to pull is pricing. So it's not about drastic changes. It's about knowing your market and pulling the lever of reducing prices, going at the right time, all the things. So what was I gonna say with pricing? I forgot. These are just like random examples, you guys, too. So don't take, sometimes things are written and it's taken at face value, but should be specific to your market, what your last minute discounting is, what your far out premiums are, all the things. Okay. So I just wanted to touch on Price Labs being automated in the fact that it does change your prices on a daily basis. I can't imagine like going in and adjusting rates and like trying to look at all of the data and information and graphs every single day and then adjusting all of my daily rates based off of that. But so there's a lot of things that it really does do. It's just not a set and forget. So make sure you're paying attention. Okay. So automating maintenance supply, there are a handful of different ways that you can do this. Honestly, you guys, Hospitable is another place that you can do automations for this. Turno, you can use to automate not only clean your schedules, but your supply as well, based on checklists. You can use hubs like Monday.com, Notion, all the things to have keep track of these types of things. And the items that I feel like I'm telling you guys about to make sure you're tracking are changing filters on your AC units and your HVAC furnaces, and AC. Make sure you're checking for hot tub chemicals. If you use something called a frog ease, that the chemicals that float throughout the hot tub, make sure you're understanding when you have put a new one in and when it's time to change them. When are you scheduling deep cleans? When are you stocking up on inventory? Make sure you're understanding your own system. Do you do it weekly? Do you do it monthly? Do you do it quarterly? Just have an idea of what that looks like for you and then start applying it and adjust from there. So that you don't, the whole point of this call at the very beginning, we talked about reactivity versus proactivity. And the last thing you want is constant. I feel like I did this when I first started out because I didn't understand like how busy we would be, but you know, every other turnover, the cleaner letting me know, well, we're low on this, we're low on this. And I finally realized that doing bulk supply is a lot more efficient. Um, so that's an idea. If you guys have places to store things in a locked closet, do not buy bulk supply of things and not lock your closet. It is asking for trouble. Too tempting. So, yeah, have your systems for that. And then have it should be automated. Your cleaner should know what to do every turnover. They should have their checklist. They should know what they're supposed to communicate to you. They should know what photos they send you. So that's all automated. I can't imagine if every turnover I had to say, hey, will you send me a picture of XYZ? That would be way too time consuming and impossible. So make sure they understand that. And that also goes along with making sure you're hiring a cleaner that is familiar with short-term rentals. If you just hire a residential cleaner and they have no experience, unless you're willing to train them, which is okay too, they may not understand what these systems are for and what they look like. Better yet, if you can find a cleaner that has an Airbnb themselves, they will get it. They will understand the importance of those things. Just a little side note on cleaners. Other automations, Amazon subscribe and save. So just make sure you know when those items, if you do those automated deliveries, make sure you know when they're going to get delivered. You do not want to bombard your guests with packages. It's not ideal. You also can't guarantee that that guest isn't gonna, like, what are they gonna do with the package? You don't know. I always have assume the best about people, but you never know. If you didn't see the package physically there and you never, I don't know, you just don't want to set them up for temptation, I guess. But uh, if you are doing the subscribe and save, know when they're going to arrive. Make sure you're giving a guest a heads up. Proactively let them know where they can put the package or have your cleaner swing by. I made a mistake last year where I had a subscribe and save item and I did not realize when it was going to be getting delivered. And it was around the holiday season. Um, and the package sat overnight. And of course it got stolen because that's when people even, in very nice neighborhoods, that's when people know that lots of packages are getting delivered. So it's really sad to see on the Ring camera your package getting taken. I saw his face and everything. It's wild. But um yeah, you just don't want to be in those situations. So have a plan or send your packages to your cleaner if they agree upon that. Maybe you have a third kind of boots on the ground person that they do these things for you. Maybe they go shopping for you versus getting packages delivered. And then make sure you're defining with your cleaners what low inventory means. Does low mean we have one left? Does low mean we're actually to them mean we're completely out? Make sure you're defining what those descriptors mean so you're both on the same page. The last thing you want is the cleaner to say, hey, we're low on K-cups, and for you to think, oh, okay, she probably means we have 10, and she actually meant one, but you didn't have that conversation. And then I just put a note here that really a guest shouldn't ever have to reach out to you to tell you that something's out of stock. That immediately creates a scenario where they feel less than abundance, they feel scarcity. And some guests may not reach out to you to let you know that there were no trash bags. And then you don't get the opportunity to say, oh, we have some in our backup closet, or oh, let me get some mailed to you right away, or let me have my cleaner drop some off. Then you don't get that opportunity to do so. And that might just have created a poor experience where the guest just said, oh, this host is cheap. They don't even supply kitchen bags. And then they go out to the store, buy them themselves, write it in a review that the host is cheap. You don't know. You just don't know. So, um, but a guest really should not be the one. They are not your cleaner at the end of the day. They're not your inventory keeper. It's your responsibility to know the inventory. Mistakes can happen. Have a backup plan. There shouldn't ever be a situation where if a guest does have to let you know something's missing, that you don't have it in the house somewhere or in storage somewhere or have a way to get them anything. So yeah, it's like backup plans for backup plans. Um, oh yeah, I kind of found this little stat here. We don't need to focus on that. So, yeah, that's with supply and maintenance. Man, these are kind of just all the systems, you guys. Get really familiar with the softwares that are there to make your life easier. And I just want the takeaway again to be proactive versus reactive as much as possible. And that's how we get as close as we can to quote unquote passive, passively running a business. Um, Real quick, we'll kind of just talk about boundaries. So, because the topic is how to not burn out, it's really exciting in a lot of situations, depending on your personality type and who you are. It can be really fun to do guest communications. But just like how we as humans, maybe we don't want to be communicating all the time with everyone. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're starting to get annoyed with guests communicating. So learn how to set boundaries. Watch for different signs of guests who really like to communicate and guests who like to kind of be left alone more. Maybe you're getting messages constantly and at midnight, or just different people do things differently, and some people think it's totally fine and non-invasive to send messages at, midnight or 1 a.m. And it's okay to have a boundary with that, and it's okay to express that. So I have a funny story where um, we were hosting some people just up at a property that gets lots of snow, and we had some guests who I don't think really, even though we prepared them for Colorado mountain weather, I don't think they really understood snow at all or what to expect. And I remember that entire stay getting messages at 2 a.m. about asking when the shovelers were going to be coming. Like, do they come? They just had this idea in their head that as soon as it snows, someone will be there with a shovel. And I finally just had to set a boundary and explain, do a little bit of background contextual explaining of, hey, this is how it has to be. And they can't necessarily expect getting messaged back at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. And I include that personally for certain properties that we don't offer 24/7 service. And if there's an emergency, they can call 911 between XYZ hours. So setting those boundaries, I think, is important, you guys, because there's always people out there who will bleed through those boundaries. It is just part of life. Same with people's, I don't think that guests necessarily consider it a boundary breach by asking for late check-in or early arrival. It's more of a value, that maybe they find a lot of value in that, and they have no understanding whatsoever of what a turnover entails. And I have to have that perspective often, especially with bigger properties. So David, you'll kind of learn what works for you. Hosting 16, if you have 5 bedrooms, however many beds, 5+ beds probably, um, you're gonna have to learn which boundary to set about early check-in or late checkout because it will be hard to flip that house for a same-day turnover in less than your allotted time for check-in and checkout. So, um, yeah, don't let guests bully you into saying that don't let them make you feel like you have to allow that. Be very polite to the point with setting the boundary and what your hosting rules are. And then if you need to read between the lines with how they're reacting to that, make adjustments based on that. But don't let people step all over you. Um,
I have a story to kind of chime
yeah.
in on with that, and this just happened this past weekend. We had guests that were staying. They were pretty good guests. We didn't get any, issues from neighbors or anything. They kind of kept to themselves, and they had messaged us, and there was no one checking in for like a couple days, and they had requested a late checkout. They wanted to extend their day. Normally our checkout time is like 10 a.m. And we're like, all right, whatever. I think what we normally offer people if they want to extend their stay, it's like $150 for an extra night. We said $75, and they wanted to leave their flights. They changed flights around or something. They wanted to leave at 5 p.m. We're like, okay, we don't have anyone else checking in. This was on Saturday for a Sunday checkout. And then, of course, Saturday night, we got an inquiry for a family to check in on Sunday, and it was it all happened probably within 30 minutes. So if you're going to allow those late checkouts, immediately block off the calendar. It was very quick turnaround time. We're like, what's the, whatever. It was actually my birthday. We sent, like had birthday cake, whatever. And it was within 30 minutes. And then we spent, I don't even know how long on the phone. We were trying to offer the guest who booked an additional day for free at the end of the trip to come in later, and we would have the cleaners come. They just couldn't check in at 4 o'clock. And they're like, no, we have a toddler. That's not going to work. And we ended up calling Airbnb. Luckily, they didn't penalize us for a cancellation. We explained the situation to them. We were trying to have the guests cancel, but I think because it was such a last minute booking, they couldn't get refunded, which obviously they didn't want to not get their money back. But we're like, the guest wants to cancel and we can't figure it out. And Airbnb, it took a phone call and a lot of stress for a little while, but advice from me is just make sure you do it before you even say yes. I think block off the calendar, because we're like, we're not going to get like a 3-day booking or whatever. And then sure enough, we did. And then we were scrambling, but in the end, it all worked out, but it was
Good.
stressful.
Yeah, these stories are so helpful because it's like, could you have prepared for that? Not really. I mean, if you've never come across that situation, so now moving forward, the lesson you pulled from that, it would be one thing if Dana was telling us this and being like, not having a lesson learned at the end of it, but I always love that you're able to tie it up and say, okay, so now moving forward, if I'm allowing this, the night gets blocked, no questions asked, and that's it. Otherwise, you get into a situation where then none of that was probably felt worth it. Like, they're $75 or whatever. So now you know. So it's almost, you can look at it as like a $75 lesson or whatever a dollar amount you put on your time that you spent on the phone with Airbnb, that's the cost of that lesson. So take that, everyone, and apply that to your situations. That's why this community is literally here. So appreciate that, Dana. With that said as well, um, yeah, it's hard sometimes to explain to people. I will always have AI help me with this when I need to explain something that I know may not be received well. So, for example, recently we had an inquiry for a guest that it was a great booking, a far out booking for like a week or something. And the guest reached out and said, We're really excited to stay here. However, we need to check in at 6 a.m. And it was, right away, then I just made sure they understood, well, check-in time is at 4 p.m. If you'd like to block the night before, you're more than welcome to do so for X amount. That counts as a night. And they couldn't accept that. They couldn't understand it. And I'm at the point now where it's, hey, you know what? We don't align as guest and host, and that is a flag to me that probably other things are going to be misunderstood during that stay as well, or expectations may not align. And so that guest would be better suited for a host who is willing to let somebody in at 6 a.m. and block the previous night for free, which I don't recommend that. That's, giving away, that's charity. That's just handing a night away for free. Um, so those are boundaries though, right? So I set a boundary with that guest and they didn't book. And boundaries are there to protect you as a business owner and the guest because they wouldn't have had a good experience at my property because I probably would have set other boundaries as well that maybe they just aren't used to. Maybe there's someone in their life who has always gotten their way with every single thing that they always do and they don't have any sympathy or understanding of the way of the world. But that happens. So, yeah, definitely stick to your boundaries, phrase things, plug it into ChatGPT, make sure you're not sounding emotional, make sure it's sounding clear, and that'll go a long way for you. So, yeah, set boundaries with the times of day you send messages, protect your time, and start delegating if you're moving on to just more than one property. So that's really all I have, you guys. Um, I hope this call was helpful. I think the questions, the interactions, the experiences are all super helpful. Um, don't be afraid, guys, to always drop questions in these calls, especially in the chat. And yeah, David, I hope that you get the Schlag app figured out. Thanks, Dana. I love that you come to these calls. So keep us posted, David, will you?
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay, yeah, keep us posted. And that's it, guys. I appreciate you all. Thanks for being here. We'll see everyone next week.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.